Today we have two Tudor Black Bays. We have the Gen 1 and the Gen 3, and it's time to put these two head to head. Welcome back to another versus video at Chisholm Hunter. My name is Harrison, as always. And today we have the Gen 3 versus the Gen 1 Tudor Black Bay. And this is a personal one for me because the Tudor Black Bay Heritage Gen 1, it's mine. Let's begin with the specs of these watches, and after we take a look at all the specs, we'll look at the big changes, design changes that have happened between these two models, that have happened between 2016 when the Gen 1 was released to 2023 when this bad boy was released. Both of these models come in at 41mm in diameter. However, I would say that the Black Bay Gen 3 wears considerably smaller than the Gen 1, and I think this is partly to do with the lug-to-lug. The lug-to-lug on the Gen 3 comes in at 49mm, but on the Gen 1 comes in at 50mm. So the Gen 1 might actually suit bigger wrists that little bit better, whereas the Gen 3 might suit slimmer people that little bit better. Both of these models, of course, come in stainless steel. Now, for the purposes of this review, I have got the rubber strap variant, but remember that this also comes in a 5-link bracelet or, similar to this, a 3-link bracelet. But the major upgrade here between these two is the Gen 3 actually has the T-Fit clasp with on-the-fly macro adjustments, and this is absolutely phenomenal. I wish my Tudor Gen 1 had this, but instead it has a safety latch at the bottom with a deployant clasp and no macro extensions on the fly. I wish I could slot the new T-Fit bracelet on my older generation of Black Bay. Now, Tudor have actually stopped doing the fabric strap for the Black Bay and began this rubber and also the 3 and 5-link bracelets. Now, the 5-link is new and it looks unbelievable in person. It's funny, I actually said in a different review that I was going to get that watch in with the 5-link bracelet in order to slate it, in order to say, why would a sports watch have a 5-link dressy looking bracelet? I got it on the wrist at Watches and Wonders. I then got it in and I honestly ate my words. I was wrong. It looks absolutely phenomenal on the wrist, especially with that T-Fit clasp. So there's just been major upgrades within the bracelet system of the Black Bay, and unfortunately it's left my Gen 1 a little bit in the dust there. Looking at the face of both of these watches, there's some major differences that come through. This is where we start seeing the big changes that Tudor have introduced. But before we go into that, remember that Chisholm Hunter are authorized retailers of Tudor watches. If you want to start your watch journey or continue your watch journey, make sure you head out to chisholmhunter.co. Head out to Chisholm Hunter? I mean, we do have 29 stores. Or head to chisholmhunter.co.uk. The first major upgrade on the Black Bay Gen 3 that I noticed was the bezel. Now, the bezel on the Gen 1 is less aggressive and less prominent. The grooves on the bezel are a lot closer together and a lot smaller, whereas when you look at the Gen 3 Black Bay, you can see that the teeth are a lot bigger, a lot more grippy, and the bezel kind of slopes downwards that little touch. It looks a lot more aggressive. It's almost like getting the M Sport version of a BMW. The lines look more aggressive. It looks more, I've said aggressive 3 times. What's another word for aggressive? I don't know, let me know in the comments. Now, both of these models still have domed sapphire crystal glass, and there's very minimal amount of movement there. They pretty much are exactly the same in terms of the glass. In terms of the dial though, that's where you get to a couple. There's actually 2 huge changes on the dial. On the Gen 1 Black Bay, you have a really nice curved, self-winding symbol or text, and that is why we nickname it the smiley, because it looks almost like a smiley face. However, on the Gen 2, and now the Gen 3 has changed again, we have master chronometer, but not in that smiley format, just in a flat format. Now, I would have loved to see the smiley heritage coming back into this movement, especially with the new introduction of a COSC and METAS certified movement. I think that would have been really cool and kind of a nod to Tudor's history. Having that little smiley come back, I think would really get us watch nerds excited. The next point that is a huge change and a big deal to a lot of people in the industry is the change of the second hand from a snowflake second hand to a lollipop second hand. Now, the lollipop second hand was actually introduced in 1954 with the original Tudor Submariner. So a lot of people were really excited that they were bringing this lollipop second hand back. But in my personal opinion, and I'd like to hear your personal opinion, I think the snowflake hand is more of a nod to Tudor's heritage and more of a nod to the first iteration, the new reincarnation of the Black Bay. So I would have liked to see that snowflake hand continue and it to build its legacy instead of just referring to the old lollipop secondhand. Now yes, there's arguments for both sides here, and I quite like the aesthetic of both, but personally I would just go for the snowflake. Another really important point that has changed between these two models and has been upgraded and also pulled inspiration from that 1954 Tudor Submariner is the crown. The crown on the new Gen 3 model is a lot more teethy and a lot more stubby. It's not quite as tall, but it's a little bit thicker and it's a lot easier to turn. It is a lot more functional and also looks very, very similar to the 1954 classic. However, my personal favorite is the Tudor Gen 1 ETA because it's a little bit taller and less teethy, so technically it's not as user-friendly. However, the tube between the crown and the case of the watch is coloured in red or burgundy, just like the bezel. And I love that little touch of colour. I love that little detail that is very different to what other watches give. And actually, when I was getting this Tudor Black Bay, as weird as this sounds, but that was one of the main reasons why I got it. And now we get to the huge difference, the one that shook the industry and the one that got implemented into the Tudor Black Bay Heritage and will be ruled out across the rest of the Tudor range. It is the Kosk and Metas certified movement. The Tudor Gen 1 has the ETA movement 2824 with 25 joules. It beats with a frequency of 28,800 VPH and it has approximately 38 hours of power. The new Tudor Gen 3 has a Kosk and Metas certified in-house movement. This is the caliber MT5602-U and it's a self-winding mechanical movement with a bi-directional rotor system. And this has approximately 70 hours of power reserve. Now, to get a Kosk and Metas certified movement for the price that a Tudor Black Bay comes in at is pretty damn incredible. And after a conversation with Tudor at Watches and Wonders, I know that their strategy moving forward is to roll out this Kosk and Metas certified movement to all of their current lines and all of their current models, which is honestly astounding. This is the lowest price item, or the lowest price watch that you can get Kosk and Metas certification with, which is a pretty big deal. Now that is the main differences between the Gen 1 and Gen 3 Tudor Black Bay. There's a couple of little subtle details that we didn't cover, but they're very, very minute. So that is the main details between the two. Let me know in the comments which one you prefer. And to be honest, on a personal level, there's bits of both that I like. I prefer the smiley dial. I wish they would have used that on the new generation, and I prefer the crown from the Gen 1 generation as well. However, I probably prefer the bezel on the Gen 3 generation. And I prefer the T-Fit clasp on the Gen 3 generation. I suppose that's the watch industry, isn't it? You like stuff, you don't like stuff, you get another one, so on and so forth. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed, please hit that subscribe button to help us reach our goal of 50,000 subscribers. My name is Harrison, as always, and this is the Chisholm Hunter channel. We'll see you guys in a couple of days.